Hey skiers, it's Bob with skiessentials.com.
And I'm Matt. How's it going?
Matt and I are here today to talk about a ski that Matt has spent a lot of time on. If you've been kind of following us throughout the winter, you'll know that we kind of hooked into this 2026 Dynastar M-Free 100 pretty early on as an upgrade or an update from the outgoing M-Free 99. Matt specifically, after I'll take credit, my recommendation, I'm like, Matt, you should really get on this M-Free 100. You'll really like it. Hooked into it, and I would say consider yourself fortunate for actually acquiring a pair, as they are kind of hard to find.
Yeah, very hard to find.
Yeah, we went through this with the M-Free 108 when it came out last year. It was like they got snatched up right away. Whatever was available was gone.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would consider yourself fortunate to be on one of the few pairs of the M-Free 100s for this year, and they will be released when we get our regular order in the summer. But really, really interesting skis. I know you've spent a lot of time on them. I've spent less time, but enough to kind of formulate an opinion. And Jeff opted out of this one because he didn't get on it a whole lot. He was stuck on his Sender Free 100 from Rosignol, and he also felt that he would just not be able to stop talking about that ski if he were in on this review. So here we are.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's get started on construction. I'll kind of walk through the new build and kind of how it relates to this 99 here. If you want to hand me one of those, please.
Absolutely.
Basically, what we're dealing with here in terms of construction is the implementation of Dynastar's Hybrid Core 2.0, which is, I would say, the main change from the M-Free 99 here, which relied on the initial hybrid core. So this one just has a poplar wood core and polyurethane along the sides. The big difference in the wood core here is that they're using 3 different layers of poplar. So one flat one on the bottom, and then the top 2 are milled and joined together. We see this wood core and polyurethane, this hybrid core, found in the M-Cross series, the M-Pro series, just without the metal.
Yeah.
So this is the metal-free version of those core constructions. And for how well the M-Pro and the M-Cross turn and carve and provide energy to the ski, putting that in the M-Free 100 is awesome. So really sophisticated construction. We look at these polyurethane strips along the side, and it's really like just plastic. But when you actually hold the core profile in your hand, our rep has brought it in before, it's crazy light.
Really?
And it's amazing how much energy and damping they get from using this polyurethane material along the sides.
I think this is an exemplary example of how construction and shape work together in a ski.
Yeah.
And it's just nuts how much of that PU you can actually see, and how much of it takes up the core. It's really interesting. You don't see that in any other ski.
No, and I was surprised too when that sample was brought in, just how much of the core is actually plastic.
Almost half, right?
Yeah, and plastic, you don't want to think about plastic as being part of a core construction. You're like, I want wood and metal and carbon and these other things, but this material does really well. And if you've skied on a Dynastar, an M-Cross, or an M-Pro, or an M-Free, anything with this hybrid wood core, there's something there.
Yeah.
Pretty cool stuff.
Totally.
And that's about it. There's not a whole lot else going on. The joining of the wood really helps get this ski to give more precise precision and power, and we'll talk about that more when we get into performance. And it is a noticeable change from here. We were just comparing sidewall and core thicknesses before, and the yellow sidewall gives a really good indication of how this new ski has a thicker wood core profile throughout, while the older one is thinner. Interestingly, and I don't think you know this, but I weighed them before. If you're wondering why there's an unboxed look Pivot 15 down there,
I was wondering.
Well, we didn't weigh the ski before you mounted it, but your ski with this binding, 3259. The pivot's 1243. Subtract to get 2,016 grams per ski.
Okay.
This M-Free 99 ticks in just a bit higher at 2,043. So it's a little bit heavier, and part of that is because they're using more epoxy. So that's another big reason of the new Hybrid Core 2.0 is that they're using the joinery of these two poplar laminates in order to bond the ski as opposed to additional layers of epoxy, lowering waste, carbon footprint, and a byproduct is you're increasing the energy through that friction process of those wood laminates being bonded together.
Right. It's pretty impressive that there's that much of a weight difference when this is also a wider ski and a thicker ski.
We'll get to that when you talk about shape.
Yeah.
But before that, we also noticed that the yellow portion of the ski here, I don't think you'll be able to see it, but there's probably an extra 5 centimeters of sidewall in the new 100 versus the 99. We were talking before, that combined with the shape, a little bit wider in the back, does deliver more energy and power to the finished portion of the ski. So there is a difference in how the wood core is inlaid into the overall shape. So pretty cool stuff. You know, Dynastar, the fact that they're using this wood core in all of their skis, from the more front side, all-mounted, oriented M-Cross through that high power M Pro and now into M-Free 100 and 108. It's a good construction.
Totally. Yeah. Makes sense. And it brings the whole collection together from Dynastar.
Yeah, I think
you know you're on a Dynastar.
Yeah, they have a distinct feel to them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, moving on to shape. And that's when the drama really begins, because it's a drama-filled shape. There's a lot going on. There's a lot going on. So overall, we get a slightly wider build with about 3 millimeters added to the tip and tail, and then 2 added in this 185 to the underfoot zone. But if you are thinking of a mustachio-shaped ski, this is the one that you're going to be thinking of. Like, there's just so much camber underfoot, probably like a whole centimeter between the bases, which is pretty uncommon. I feel like we're going pretty flat profile, like we're going in the direction of flat profiles for skis nowadays, and this kind of goes the other direction. But then the tips and tails, lots of camber. I mean, lots of rocker, excuse me. But I mean, it starts all the way down there.
Yeah, and these are very similar. Like, there's not a big difference between the mustache shape of the 99 and the 100.
No.
From a side view perspective.
But then for the tail rocker, it's almost even.
Yeah, it's a well-balanced ski. There's a good amount of symmetry, and, you know, talk about the splay too. There's just a lot of height in both tips and tails.
But we can get into it later, but that definitely comes into play, that splay in the tail. But coming back to that construction and shape relationship, but they work really, really well together. Like this shape, this camber underfoot really shines in a carved turn. Yeah. And you know, when you're buying a 100 millimeter underfoot twin tip, you're probably not thinking about carving performance, but you can certainly start thinking about carving performance when you're looking at this one. But then we'll get into the tip and tail taper. They're pretty different. Like a lot of times they're fairly symmetrical in a ski like this, but they're pretty different. Like the taper comes down probably until about the end of the sidewall here, and that really makes them hypermobile off trail.
Yeah, it's pretty pointy.
Yeah,
like as far as a free ride ski goes, there's a lot of flatter, more shovel oriented ones, but this one is pretty direct.
Yeah, totally. And you know, that comes through in terms of carving performance as well, because it doesn't necessarily pull you across the fall line. You have to be the one to do it. But then this tail has a little bit less of that taper that we were just discussing, that pointiness, and has a little bit more of that squared off feeling. And that's where it really shines through in a carved turn. Towards the end of the turn, it just makes it a little bit more precise.
Yeah, I feel like the tail actually looks more like the tips of a lot of other more modern free ride skis.
Totally,
so it's
100%.
It's an interesting visual.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it for shape. Like, it's very unique and very well rounded and well put together and pointy.
Yeah, and both have an 18-meter turn radius. So you can keep holding on to that.
I know you like to hold it. I know you like to hold skis.
Well, I got this one to hold. They're similar enough.
Yeah.
But yeah, a little bit wider, but still keeps the same overall footprint. So still has an 18-meter turn radius in this 185. But yeah, I mean, really interesting kind of modern freestyle shape. And we've talked about, our kind of love for Dynastar twin tips over the years. And, just from a nostalgia standpoint, my first foray into twin tips in the year 2000 was a Dynastar. And so I've been on like the concept of twin board, which was like a Candide Dovex early pro model. It was a 180 and it was unbelievable. Going from a 200 mogul ski to a 180 twin tip was just a wild transition. And then through like the Dynastar Twister, the Sixth Sense, the Slicers, the Menaces, now into M-Free, Dynastar has really always kind of been at the forefront of all mountain twin tip technology and pretty fun stuff too.
Yeah, they know how to do it. They know how to do a twin tip.
Yep. Yeah, let me ask you some hard-hitting questions. You have not prepped for this, so we're going to get right to it and kind of do what we normally do. Asking about on-piste, off-piste, some park because it's a twin tip, and then move into some comps.
Sure.
So we talked about on-piste, and we've had this conversation with a lot of 100 millimeter kind of all mountain / freeride skis this year. There's been a lot of good ones. Similar to what I asked you about the Revolt 101 from Vocal, for a 100 millimeter underfoot ski with no metal. Like, how does this thing carve as well as it does?
It shouldn't, but
Right.
it does.
Yeah.
Like, that's the short answer. But that camber and that hybrid core 2.0 really work well together. Like, that friction between the top two layers of the poplar laminates and then that loading of the camber is just incredible. Like it comes through on the footage, but you can literally see an acceleration at the end of the turn or me just going into the air.
Yeah.
Like, it just is incredible. But that camber, it almost feels like it's just like gorilla gripping like the snow. As soon as you start to lay it over and push into it, it just feels like they just lock in immediately. I don't think I've really had it on super firm snow yet, so I'm not sure what that will. I can't say what that's like. But on really nice pack powder groomers or some crud and chop, it's amazing. Like, I'm very thankful for the taper and that crud because it just knifes through while the camber helps get to the bottom and firmer snow underneath and just hold you there.
I think like the first time we skied them at Pico was the firmest of the days that we skied, and no issues with that level. I mean, we were blessed with a wonderful snow season and didn't really get a lot of thaw and refreeze.
Right.
And I think it's fairly obvious that this wouldn't be a first choice from a refreeze after a thaw standpoint for an edge grip. It's not like this is going to be outperforming an M-Cross 88 just to stick with Dynastar, but there are a handful of other 100s out there that are going to outperform it on those days, and we can kind of get to that in a second. Specifically, I brought one up, edge grip compared to an Unleashed 98 from Nordica. It's okay. You can say that the Unleashed has better grip if you want. It's fine.
It does. The Unleashed certainly does, but this is close, and they accomplish it in different ways. Like the metal and the soft flex of the Unleashed give it the torsional stiffness and the ability to really manipulate the ski. Whereas this one, the edge grip comes from the camber, but then the amount of energy and pop is where you really get the rewarding feeling from.
Yeah.
But I will say, to add, I cannot think of another ski that has this ratio of dampness to energy.
Okay.
Like that I feel like needs to be said. Like the Unleashed is close, but I think this has more zest. It's more electric when it comes to that.
And we had that conversation, I think, last Friday, where this ski contains opposing qualities like that.
Yeah.
Like energy and dampness don't usually go together. So when a ski can accomplish that, that's a nice thing.
Totally.
Give me your assessment of performance at high speed versus low speed. And specifically, I think about camber, and we've talked a lot about camber and how that differs between high speed and low speed performance.
Sure. You're able to take advantage of it most at higher speeds. You can get caught up a little bit when going slowly, especially in less ideal snow. It just can be a little bit catchy.
Yeah.
But I think that if you are a strong skier, physically strong, or your technique is good, you won't even feel it. But I think that if you're someone who's like a intermediate skier, you might get a little hung up with that. Like it just it has those contact points will make themselves known pretty quickly. But in terms of going slow off piste, like I just kind of thinking back to last Friday, we were going down hayride. It was really slushy, really warm, wet snow, going down through some moguls. And where I found this really started to be fun at slow speeds was when you would kind of go straight, like if this is a mogul, you kind of go straight almost to the top of it and then you slash.
Yeah.
And then you can kind of come around it. That's when the surfing character came out. But it was those small little instances where you could find the playfulness and counteract the camber. But if you're just on trail going slow on like a blue, it might be a little catchy.
Interesting point, and I feel like you're talking about using the terrain as an unweighting, I don't want to say crutch, but an object that helps you unweight as opposed to that flat blue groomer where there's no terrain helping you, but the mogul allows you to unweight easier.
Totally.
So yeah, that makes sense. All right, a Playmaker 101 is a 1. A Mantra 102 is a 10. How damp is this ski?
7.5.
Good answer. No, I think
that your guess?
I don't know. I was interested to see what you thought. Because it's hard to say it's less than 5.
Right.
It's hard to say that it's less than middle damp it's more.
Yeah.
But then there's a whole host of skis that are between 7.5 and Mantra 102.
Right.
But it's up there. It's more damp than it is not.
Yes.
Is what you're telling me.
Yeah, and I think that if I had the 192, is that the next length up?
Yeah, I think so.
I think if I had the 192, it would be 8.25.
Yeah, but it's getting there. A ski without metal, the thick wood core does play into it.
And it's silent. That's the other thing too. This thing is a ninja. It just does not make any noise whatsoever. Like sometimes vocals have a sound, Kessley's have a sound.
Yeah.
That Sender Free 100 certainly has a sound.
Yep.
This one is just, there's nothing.
That's the PU.
Yeah.
It really silences the ski. It's pretty cool. Off-piste. You ever ski this, 99?
No.
Did you ski this last year?
No.
So I'll give you my take on this.
Sure.
Is that it's easier to turn than that. It's more mobile, it's more agile. I found this to be a wonderful tree ski. How does that thing work in trees, bumps, crud, chop?
It was a little bit snow condition dependent for me. We were out one day and it was refrozen underneath in the trees and with a little bit of snow on top. And I actually found them to be catchy during that experience.
Yeah.
But once we got into more like pure soft snow and then slush, it was no problem at all. Very easy to release the tails. And then the taper shape took over and was very, very maneuverable. But then again, I would say I'm a pretty physically strong skier, so I'm able to muscle skis that maybe are not maneuverable. But I would say they're more maneuverable than the Revolt 101 for me.
Yeah.
If we're comparing, 100 underfoot skis at the moment. But no, I think they're just fine for me.
Yeah, this was always a top tree ski, this 99, because it was very easy to steer from the tip, and then it didn't feel as camber grippy as the new 100.
Right.
So if anything, I would say that this 99 is slightly better in the trees and kind of slower speed off piste, a little bit more adventurous skiing than the 100, especially at slower speeds and if you're less aggressive of a skier.
I did find that there were moments where it was difficult to maneuver, but then once I figured out that you use the loading of the tip and tail and use that energy in those situations to unweight and change direction, that's when it really became fun. Like you drive the tip into a bump or like a trough, and then at the end of it, you kind of push through your heel and use the tail's energy to change direction.
Yeah.
That's when they really shine. You couldn't really ride the tails and just surf it all that much.
Talk about crud, chop, adverse conditions, and terrain.
Okay. Thank you, dampness.
Yeah.
Thank you to that, because it was just confidence inspiring. You just felt like you could drive right through any of that crud or chop.
And we had a bunch of that. Like we had a lot of days where it was broken snow.
Yeah, like that lift
new
line
snow,
day.
broken snow, lift line. Yeah.
That was pretty exemplary. There was one or two situations where I did stuff the tip, but that might just be because these actually measure to be shorter than 185.
Yeah.
Ever so slightly. I think that issue would not have happened if I was on the longer length. But then I think there would be a downgrade in maneuverability off trail. But they were great in the slush too. When that chopped up snow became heavier, that pointy tip shape really helped out a lot and just sliced.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's why they called it that.
Yeah.
For sure. Does it float better or worse than a Salomon QST 100?
Worse.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's just not, that taper really takes away a lot. But then I think that this slice is better than the QST.
Yeah.
QST gets a little bit more deflected, whereas this tracks a little bit better through that crud and chop.
Good answer. Let's move on to park. You know, this is not as much of a park-specific ski as that Rossignol Center-Free 100, but it's still a twin tip. I've seen you take it in the park. Can you give me some pluses and minuses of the ski in the park rather than me asking you specific questions? It's more open-ended, some positives and negatives for freestyle specific performance, if you would.
Sure. You definitely have to be calculated.
Because it's not a central, sorry to step in,
please.
but it's not as central of a mount point as the M-Free. You know, I didn't quite measure it, but that recommended line is more directional for sure.
Totally.
And I assume you're on that line, or did you go?
I stayed on recommended.
Okay.
Yeah. You have to be calculated. That camber, if you don't land something perfect, it's difficult to wash it out and smear it. But it's very rewarding when you are precise and calculated, because when you stomp something, like, it feels good.
Yeah.
But takeoffs on jumps and then like rail lips are awesome, because you just are, it's like being on a trampoline. You
Yeah.
just pop right up. But you know, I did some 540s on it, landed switch, and didn't feel like it was all that catchy. And then the PU as well, although we're at 2,000 grams-ish, the swing weight feels very low. So if you're doing rail tricks, it honestly feels just fine. I think that the swing weight plays a big factor there. And from my experience, the swing weight feels less than like a QST 100.
Yeah.
But not the most smeary in the park for buttering or like landing tricks. Not perfectly, not ideal, but takeoffs were awesome. And then sometimes in our jumps here, because we only have two and everybody hits them, there's a lot of really big trench in runs.
Yeah.
And these just plow right through that and don't waver through that stuff, which is nice.
Yeah, I mean they're pretty solid skis, and compared to some other more park-oriented ones, then yeah, you're going to be able to dominate that takeoff rut line for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Let's move into some comps. We had already talked about the Unleashed 98. I kind of like to think about who would ski an Unleashed 98 over this or vice versa.
Yeah.
So kind of my take is that someone who spends more time on trail would be an Unleashed 98 skier, whereas this is a little bit more adventurous. I don't know, would you agree with that?
100% agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you live on the east and you have an Unleashed 98, or you're trying to decide between this and Unleashed 98, I'm just thinking of Luke, who just loves skiing lift line, no matter what condition it is, firm, icy, POW, whatever. I think that he would have more success with that Unleashed 98, not only because he owns one and he uses it all the time, but I think that he likes that more bulbous tip shape to pull him across the fall line, whereas this, it's just a little bit different of a turn shape.
Yeah. I don't see him going across the fall line a whole lot. I see him going pretty direct.
Yeah, right. But so that's why he needs that tip to help him just go over there. But yeah, I think that if you're going to be spending either half of your time or the majority of your time off trail, this is a better option. It's just a bit more versatile. This tip shape really helps in softer snow or broken snow in the trees. And then that camber takes over when you are on trail and helps out a whole lot.
I got a couple more here. We talked about the Sender Free 100, a little bit more park oriented, not as dynamic or energetic, would you say?
Totally agree.
Sticking within Rosignol, we got two more, Matt. Okay. Rosignol Super Black Ops 98, Rosignol Sender Soul 102, and then there's this. Yeah. Where do you put this in comparison to a Black Ops 98 and a Sender Soul 102?
In between. I'd probably have to go in between. Like the Black Ops is more in that park symmetrical side, and then that Sender Soul is just give me the widest and steepest trail you got. Yeah. And then just trench the whole way down.
I weighed one of the long ones the other day. It was almost 2,400 grams.
It's a lot.
Sender Soul 102, I think 188 or 189, but yeah, it's a big ski and a lot of weight. Yeah. So you want to let that thing run.
And the Super Black Ops isn't light either. Right. Like it's up there too. Yeah. But this has more of a soft snow prowess than the Super Black Ops. I would also venture a guess that this would be more fun in softer snow if you're more of a free ride person than the Sender Soul 102. The Sender Soul.
There's a lot. Sorry, Rosignol's.
Yeah, I'm all over the place. But I think that this would be more enjoyable in softer snow, more maneuverable than a Sender Soul 102 in deeper snow.
I got two more. Okay. One of them is they're both different. So Black Crow's Justice, another 100 millimeter underfoot, kind of dramatically rockered ski. Yeah. I don't think it's out of the realm for people to be shopping both a Justice and an M-Free 100. And I know that we've both really enjoyed that Justice from a carving perspective. But I think it's a decent comp, mostly because of the tail rocker. What do you think?
Yeah, I would agree. I do think that the Justice is a little bit or more unwavering. Like that thing is just a bulldozer. I do think this is more dynamic, although when firmer snow conditions come about, I want to be on that Justice. Yeah. I think that shape also is very unique. Just the more you lay it over, the tighter the turn radius becomes, whereas this is more skier input dependent for your turn shape.
Yeah. I was going to put the QST 100 on it. We already talked about it in terms of powder, and we've also done just a ton of information on the QST 100. Yeah. So I don't really want to talk about that one anymore. Sure. I want to talk about the Atomic Bent 100. Okay. So another 100 millimeter wood core twin tip.
This is stronger, more stable, more damp, not as easily maneuverable. Yeah. I would say it's close to the maneuverability, but the bent's far easier, far more accessible. Yeah. It's easier to access that maneuverability, where this one you have to muscle it around a little bit more. But then again, that might just be the same as these are not as maneuverable. Yeah. But these are certainly a better carver in my experience. The bent has more float in the tip, and I think the bent has more of a park application.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. Any other skis you can think of? That was the end of my list and the end of my hard-hitting questions, which you did great at. There's a ton.
There's a ton.
We could do this all day.
Yeah.
Like Line Chronic 101, even like a Blizzard Wrestler 10. Like there's just a lot of, really interestingly shaped skis in that range. It's hard to stand out. If you could give kind of one or two things that makes this stand out, either good or bad, I think that would be a good way to kind of close the comparison section.
Damp and energetic. That's like the main thing that you need to know. But this tip shape is very reminiscent for me of like a QST 98.
Yeah.
Like it has that kind of feel to it. Just to go back to a comparison, I think that one is part of the conversation. But if you can come away with this with two things, it's damp and energetic, and it's one of the highest ratios that are out there. So.
Cool. Well, thanks. I also just want to briefly retouch on this M-Free 99, which we actually have a bunch of.
We have so many
downstairs, and they're at a good deal. I'm not sure what the pricing is on them right now, but this is one of those cases where just because they came out with a new 100, it's not like this 99 is all of a sudden a bad ski. And if you want this thing now, you can get it now. If you want to wait for that, you're going to have limited options and a higher price. So, just a plug for anyone who's intrigued with this and doesn't necessarily need the 2026 version. This 99 is still just a wonderful ski.
I was actually thinking about getting one of those
to complement your 100s.
Yeah, like have this one in the 185 and that in the 192. Have it a little bit softer. It could be pretty sweet.
Yeah, for sure. Anything else you want to add, or I think we covered a lot, but
there's a lot of 100 millimeter twin tips out there.
Yeah.
And like it seems like there's more and more popping up, but I think that this one is very special and should not be overlooked because I think a lot of people would benefit from it. It covers a lot of bases, has a really big sweet spot, and it seems like that 99 over there, if we have a scale of beginner to expert, and this was the zone, it seems like the new one just shifted it up ever so slightly. Yeah. So I think that there's a lot of people out there that would benefit from having a ski like this. And Dynastar's been doing it forever. They know what they're doing.
Right.
So it's a good ski.
Like 26 years of twin tips from Dynastar at this point, which is a pretty solid resume.
Yeah, for sure.
I trust them to do that.
But yeah, beware of the camber, because sometimes if you're not used to it, that will certainly trip you up.
Yeah.
But that's all I got, Bob.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Matt, for joining us. If y'all have any questions, please reach out. I will probably forward them to Matt, and he will type a response, and then I'll copy and paste it in. But yeah, certainly reach out with any questions, anything that we might have missed in terms of comparisons. Always happy to answer those questions. And make sure you check out both of these skis as they progress through the years. But yeah, thanks, Matt, and we will talk to you all soon.
Bye.
Sweet.